First talk today on day 2, we have Judy Dang. Now, founder of Avid at Work, Judy is a productivity expert who helps bold women achieve big goals without going bananas. They learn to get out of the weeds and into those important priorities to move their careers forward. Judy's great at simplifying things. Judy, I could use your help because I overcomplicate things all the time. She is great at simplifying things and offering practical tips. Judy, I'm not kidding. I'm going to have to call you. And there are easy, and these are easy to pick up into action, these tips and offering practical things. Judy brings over 18 years of project management expertise from serving universities, entrepreneurs, and professional service firms. Judy has been featured in Forbes and Wired magazine and has written for national HR publications. And this just in, Perfect Enough, Judy's book for Asian American women on breaking free of perfectionism, will be published by New Degree Press this September. And this talk will be moderated by our very own Meg Alexander, one of our amazing hosts and powerhouse people here at Power to Fly. I will hand it over to you to have a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Hunter, for that amazing introduction, as always. Judy, I'm really, really excited to dig in here. Before we get started, though, is there anything else about yourself, about your backstory that you would like people to know about you today before we dive in?
Yes, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I was born in Vietnam, and I came to the U.S. when I was 6 on a refugee boat. So I had the immigrant experience, the refugee experience. It was a rough time for me and my family, and I use that in my book, in my story, about how our experiences sometimes contribute to perfectionism, my own struggles.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people in the audience today that are also, with you as part of those struggles. So you're here to talk to us about, kind of perfectionism and the damaging effect that it has on people. You also talk about perfectionism as a form of self-sabotage. Could you expand on that for us a little bit?
I'm going to show you a whiteboard. This is an iceberg. I used to describe what perfectionism and its effects are. At the top, we might see an employee, your direct report, who's hardworking, detail-oriented, tenacious, dependable. And if that person has perfectionism tendencies, there's a huge underground foundation of self-doubt, lack of confidence, questioning themselves, never feeling good enough. So I wanted to give people an overview of, you might see this, and then there's a lot underneath. There's a lot underneath for a perfectionist. And at the heart of it, perfectionism is different from striving for excellence. Like, who doesn't want to do a good job, right? Who doesn't want to do a great job at work? The difference is that perfectionists are never satisfied with a good job. Never satisfied. There could always be more. And when they do achieve, they're very self-critical and downplay it, actually. So that's the difference between perfectionism and healthy striving, is they're never satisfied, they downplay it, and you can always achieve more.
I feel vaguely attacked right now. That is like, you kind of got a lot of things that I struggle with. I can completely agree with you, that I love the iceberg analogy or the iceberg metaphor, because like it really, there's so much behind the scenes that you don't ever see, kind of that like duck floating on a pond, like from the surface, they seem calm and everything's great, but underneath they're like kicking like crazy. Yeah. It's like that, I remember being in college and having friends, people I was in class with be like, oh, you're so well organized. You've got it all together. Girl, no, I don't. No. Have you seen like 98% of the rest of my life? Like, no, I have this like 5% under control and that's it.
Interesting. Well, that makes me have I'm going to show you a different, image, which is there's a huge gap between expectations and actual self. huge gap, and they rarely come together. And that's exactly what you demonstrated, Meg. Huge gap between your expectations and your actual self.
Yeah, of course. All right. So thank you for sharing that with us about your heritage and about your, your migration or immigration story. Do you think that there's something unique to Asian culture that really feeds into things like perfectionism? Are there facets maybe of the culture that make this a completely different experience for Asians or Pacific Islanders?
Sometimes, yes. Perfectionism crosses all boundaries. We all have it. It's just a matter of degree, right? The spectrum. We all want to do well. And sometimes I'm a perfectionist in one area of my life and not others. So it's not something that we have or don't have. It's just degree. And for Asian American culture, there's an added layer to perfectionism when we feel pressure to meet our family's expectations for what school I applied to, what job I get, who I marry. So in Asian cultures, it's a collectivist culture. What I do reflects on my family, not just me. Whereas mainstream Western American, European American culture is very individualistic.
Yes.
I am part of a web, and whatever I do moves that web. And so when I don't get straight A's, it reflects on my parents' upbringing. When I don't get into the college that is the name brand one, there's sometimes pressure that I brought shame to my family, not just me.
Yeah.
And then the next thing, the last thing is for immigrants, first generation, 1.5 generation, who have parents who struggle to come to the US, had to make sacrifices, gave up their jobs to come to the US. There's a huge pressure to make my parents' sacrifice worth it.
Yeah.
I have to, I can't go to art school. I can't go to art
like
school.
It's somehow your job to to prove value or atone for what they missed out by leaving home.
Huge pressure. That's the difference. That's the difference I've seen in my research and interviewing 19 other Asian women, is that pressure that I have to make my parents' sacrifice worth it.
That's incredible. I mean, that's got to be so suffocating and so limiting. And yeah.
Well, it's because it's an interrelated relationship. My parents took care of me. I'm expected to take care of them when they're older. So it has very positive attributes. This interdependency, very strong families. The disadvantage is that, I'm tied to my family.
Yeah. Well, if you're constantly trying to make your family proud, that kind of, you get penned in, right? You get penned in by, well, like, these are the several things that will make us proud, or these are the patterns and paths that your family, your relatives, your ancestors have walked. We want the same for you, or we want better for you, and this is our idea of how you're going to get it.
Exactly. Very narrow road, very limited choices.
Yeah. I love how you kind of differentiated that, because as you were talking about, having that much more collective culture, that was the first thing that came to my mind, was like, oh no, America's not like that. We are, all for, like, we are, like, not necessarily in it for ourselves, all of us, but like individual achievement is, that's what's encouraged, so yeah, I think that's gotta be a very huge kind of paradigm shift once you are exposed to not only the collectivism of, of your family or your culture, but also the individualism and the drive to succeed that you see here.
Yeah, there's a conflict in an Asian American mind sometimes with, at work, I'm American, and then at home, I'm Asian, and that conflict, causes a lot of stress and turmoil.
So you said that you came to America when you were, I think you said 8 or 9, right?
6.
6. Oh gosh, that's even lower. So did you, when's the first time, ish, that you remember really feeling that perfectionism, that, like, I have to live up to such and such bar?
it was unspoken. It was unspoken in my family that I had to go to college. That was the minimum, get a good job, buy a suburban house. Unspoken, implicit messaging around what was success. And in ninth grade, at that time, we had paper report cards. I had to bring it home, have my dad sign it, bring it back to school. I brought my report card home. He looked at it and he frowned. Why is this an A- and not an A+? That was the first thing he said on my report card. And so I grew up with the message that an A+ was the floor, not the ceiling.
Yeah, like good is the base, but it's not good enough. It needs to be great.
Yeah. So messages like that, other messages around, oh, so-and-so's cousin got into this school, of course, so-and-so's brother is a doctor. Nothing explicit,
Yeah,
but definitely, norms, cultural values.
Yeah, I remember, I mean, granted, it's vastly different, but the only touchstone that I have from my lived experience was, kind of getting into college. That was something everybody did. It was expected that you would apply. It was expected that you would get in someplace. It was expected that you would go and graduate in 4 years. And I remember talking to a couple of members of my graduating class who one of them was going into trades. And there were two others that were doing something else. Like one girl ended up being like, she was like a cheerleader for the Lakers or something. I can't remember. She was really great, but it was like an outlier thing. And everybody was like, oh, what are you doing? Like, whether it didn't matter that it was like, oh, trades, heck yeah, go for it. I think she's a plumber now. But like, it was one of those things where it was like, that wasn't okay. And it's like, well, why is that not okay? Why?
Right.
So if we're talking about this in terms of, professionalism and how this impacts, Asian people in the workforce, what do you think are some of the key ways that if you are a leader of a team or leader of a group that you can help support those perfectionists potentially around you? And obviously this isn't just limited to people within the Asian diaspora, but if you've got people on your team that are perfectionists, what do you need to know about like kind of helping them out or working with them and getting the best out of them?
And I'm going to use my whiteboard again.
Yes, I love a good visual illustration.
Two things for us to think about: mistakes and failures. How does your team deal with mistakes and failures? Is there psychological safety to admit mistakes? Or do people get shamed, publicly shamed? How does your team deal with setbacks, right? Think about that for yourself. What happened? What happened last time that someone made a mistake on your team? Because for a perfectionist, that is accentuated, that is catastrophic. Any mistake is seen as a reflection on them. When I make a mistake, it's like the end of the world. So if you have a direct report who you suspect catastrophizes mistakes and failures, tell a story of when you made a mistake and recovered.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, tell a story of when you made a mistake and recovered. Can you create an environment where people can come to you for mistakes and you won't browbeat them?
Yeah.
Right? Because mistakes are normal. That's how we learn.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Once more for the people in the back, y'all. Mistakes are how you learn. You don't learn by success. You don't learn from winning. You learn from something not going according to plan.
Exactly. And responding to that mistake, right? That's how you learn. It's the response, not the mistake so much itself, but how we respond.
Oh yeah. I remember the first couple of weeks that I worked at Power to Fly, this was like several years ago. We had a snag with emails for like an event or something, and a bunch of people that were not RSVPing got emailed about this event. And I mean, it was big. It was a big error because it was public facing and whatever. But I remember going to the meeting the next day afterwards and being kind of stunned by the fact that it was like, okay, well, we just want to know like how it happened and why, how can we fix it? And then here's how we're going to move forward. And here's how this will be checked, in the future so it doesn't happen again. And I came from several employers over the years that were very much like bad puppy. You get called out on the carpet, taught like in front of everyone. There was no way to like kind of explain or defend or give context.
Mhm.
And it's very, I mean, it's rough. It's rough even if you're not a perfectionist. But you know, when you're thinking about the perfectionism and all of that pressure that you put on yourself, like you said, under the surface of like we have to get everything right. Yeah, failure is just catastrophic because not only are you disappointing yourself, you're disappointing other people.
Right. Absolutely. The next one to look out for is burnout.
Yes.
Burnout, because perfectionists tend to overdo and overwork. That attention to detail is great to a point. It harms us when we miss deadlines because we can, we need to look at this draft one more time.
Yeah.
So watch for burnout because that's quite common.
Oh yeah.
It's very common for people with perfectionism. They want to do it one more time, stay late, work on during vacations, or they don't even go on vacations.
Yeah. It's always that one more revision, right? Like one more and that'll make it perfect. No, I can't send it quite yet. I got to do one more thing.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And then the third one is all or nothing thinking. And this can trip us up. It's all or nothing thinking is, I have to work hard or I'm a slacker. I got to do like 110% in everything I do. Like if I let go of perfectionism, I'll be known as a slacker. That opposing, like extreme thinking can harm your direct reports when they try to rise in upper management. Because as they get more senior, there are less situations that call for perfect, right? A lot of ambiguity
There's
in
a lot of
leadership.
nuance, yeah.
A lot of nuance, showing your direct reports that dropping perfectionism can help their careers.
That's huge too. I love that idea of kind of modeling and showing like, here's the way that I made a mistake, or here's how we're going to handle this going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crucial, right? You got to see it modeled to even understand that that's a possibility.
And if your team sees you not taking vacations, what message does that send? It's okay to take vacations, right? Especially
of course.
Completely signing off of technology.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of this is modeling.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, a lot of this is modeling behavior and being aware of some behaviors.
Okay.
Like the catastrophizing, burnout, all or nothing thinking.
I like it. Okay. So we have a question from the chat here. This person had asked, how do you transition a perfectionist employee to an employee attempting excellence, as mentioned on the whiteboard?
Yeah, how do you transition an employee from a perfectionist tendency to striving for excellence? Acknowledge that they're trying. Start off with acknowledging, because a lot of perfectionists, we live inside our heads, what's going on? Does my boss approve of what I did? So acknowledge that they want to make that shift. And ask them, is it okay for me to point out the times when I think you're perfectionistic?
Oh God, can I tell you how impactful that would be? Truly, like, because I feel like I'm being perfectionistic all of the time, and yet it's incredibly difficult to stop. But that's huge. That would be massive to have to have like my manager or my supervisor or whatever be like, hey, I think this might be a situation you're perfectionizing. Let's take a step back. I love that.
Yep. Ask if it's okay for you to gently point it out. And you can point it out in this way. I notice that you like to leave no stone unturned. But I also see this has caused you to miss deadlines. Can we talk about this? Instead of, can you stop doing that?
Yes.
Can we talk about this?
Well, I feel like people who are very perfectionist or perfectionistic, they all, you do want it to be perfect, right? And we talk about those kind of revisions and whatever, but we also, speaking as somebody from within that tent, like I it's like I completely forget that we can revise things after they're turned in. We can revise and iterate and do all of those things that you keep kind of wanting to do before you share it with everyone.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things where it's like, if you just, we talk about it, power to fly a lot. We talk about don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Yeah.
So like, try and think of it as like, okay, if it's great or it's good, awesome,
Yes.
let's run with it. And then we can
Exactly.
keep going and keep developing and keep refining as we go.
Exactly. People with perfectionist tendencies don't want to, like they will delay and procrastinate and hesitate. And I heard a great quote from somebody recently that half-ass is better than no ass.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. There was that Ron Swanson quote from Parks and Rec a couple years back. It was like, don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing.
Yes, cool. Half-ass is better than no ass. The last thing to respond to that question is help your direct report differentiate when things need to be for a grade or pass fail.
Oh, yes.
Help your direct report decide, okay, which of my 10 priorities I'm going to go for a grade and which can be pass fail. Because for a perfectionist, everything needs to be 100%.
Yes. Oh my God. It's like these are wonderful. I cannot wait to rewatch this chat again later. Cause like everything you're saying, I'm loving this, loving this. Have you ever had to have this conversation? Like, has somebody had it with you? Have you had to have it with team members or direct report?
I've had to have it in my own business with myself. When I noticed, okay, this is the second night I'm staying up at 2 a.m. trying to tweak my website color. Okay.
Yes.
The font on my website. Okay, this is a sign. I've had the conversation with myself. Yeah, many times.
Oh, of course. All right, so we have another question from the chat. Joni asks, what if you tend to be a perfectionistic manager and have trouble training or accepting anything less than the standards that you set for yourself?
And I'm looking at Joni's question so I can.
It's a good one. Joni, I love this question because I feel like there are definitely a lot of people that get into management and then are kind of holding other people to those standards that they hold themselves to. What would you say to Joni?
There are two facets to that. If you have high standards for yourself and they're healthy high standards, like healthy striving, great. Do that for yourself, healthy striving. Watch out when you impose those standards on others, that if they don't meet your standards, it's not good. They're not successful, because for a supervisor, they wield a lot of power in terms of standards, expectations, promotions, pay raises, right? So watch out for your own standards and imposing them on someone else. Ask your direct reports, what does excellence mean to you? Engage, and then you can say, well, excellence means to me this, and then is there a way to negotiate? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to lose someone, right? You don't want to lose your team because it's impossible to meet your standards.
Yeah. Oh, and that's massive, because it's going to for at least for your employees, it's going to constantly feel like, well, the bar is so high.
I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the other thing is, I'll just do the minimum. I'm not going to stick my neck out. I'm not going to take risks. I'll just do the minimum.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to flag that, like, that's, people come to that kind of settling or that like resignation about what's going on, because the perfectionist person is still, generally speaking, in the all or nothing category. If it doesn't meet their standard, it might as well not exist. Oh my gosh, my husband is a total perfectionist. It seriously has taken us, we've been together for 11 years. It has taken us that long to start breaking down this thing of like, okay, just because I didn't mop the floor the way you would have done it doesn't mean you have to completely do it over again. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's hard, right?
Yeah, Joni, when you're deciding, is it getting it done that matters or the standard that matters, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything that you recommend people say if they find they are, you know, in the position of like having a manager like Joni? No offense, Joni, but you know, like having somebody who is kind of perfectionistic. Is there anything that a you know, I want to say subordinate, I guess, could do at that point?
Yeah. If for a direct report who's working with someone with perfectionist tendencies, clarify which priorities deserve the grade and which can do pass fail, because you can't do it all. So clarify with your supervisor. What is the standard? Because you can't do 100% in everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, completely. You're going to burn yourself out.
Prioritize, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we only have 3 minutes left in the session. These always go very, very quickly. But before we jump today, I want to talk a little bit more about your upcoming book. Now, Hunter had mentioned it briefly. It's called Perfect Enough. Tell us about it. Tell us about the book, where we can find it, all this good stuff.
Yeah, Perfect Enough is a guide on letting go of perfectionism. And it's especially written for Asian American women. It's especially written for Asian American women. There are tons of books on perfectionism, but there wasn't any that specifically addressed my experience, my community. So that's what the book is about. 19 interviews, my own personal stories, scientific research. There's even a section on for parents, for bosses, for spouses, to help support someone who they think is a perfectionist.
I love this. Oh, I love it so much. So when is the book coming out?
It's coming out in September, and I will put the
Yeah,
link.
please share a link with us so we can share it with our crew here. It sounds absolutely wonderful. Do you think that the book is applicable not just to Asian Americans or Asian people? Do you think that it's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are universal concepts in the book about not feeling good enough, you know, not feeling good enough, shame, self-worth issues, those cross perfectionism, all boundaries. And then I add an extra dollop of Asian flavor to it.
Of course, yes. All right. So in the last 2 minutes, I want to take a little bit of time to ask a question that I always love to ask people I get the chance to interview. If you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, and it could be 5 minutes ago, it could be 2 days ago, you would tell yourself not to eat that burrito. It could be, I wish I'd picked a different major in college. Truly, I've seen like a lot of like silly ones and also big ones. But if you could give yourself a piece of advice anytime prior to right this second, what do you think that advice would be?
It'd be a business advice for myself. Charge more.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes, I love this.
Charge more. I second guessed myself and didn't feel qualified.
Right?
And it's reflected in my pricing strategy.
I heard something a couple of years ago that has always stuck with me, which is know your worth and then add tax. Yeah. And it's one of those things that kind of gets you thinking of like, okay, but what other little extras that I do for this am I not considering? What, you know, where's the padding a little bit in what I'm doing that like I'm actually getting what I'm worth for what I'm providing.
Nice. I like that. Thank you, Meg.
Hey, sharing knowledge. You've already blown my mind 3 times in the last 30 minutes. So
Hunter, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about you, Hunter.
Yeah. All right. This is going to end us for today. I want to keep us on time, but Judy, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Good to be with you all.
Bye, everybody.
Judy. Thank you, Meg. Oh, Judy, so much helpful knowledge in there.